Hello everyone, and welcome back to my tutorial campaign in Realistic Progression 0, the campaign mod for the Realism Overhaul suite of realism mods in Kerbal Space Program. So, in the last episode, we tested out our Retriever lunar lander in Earth orbit. We currently have building another version of that and a Labrador Block 3, and we're going to launch them both into Earth orbit and then perform a rendezvous, docking, shake it out in Earth orbit, and then we will be ready to do a lunar test. So, let's see. This is so roughly we're gonna do the equivalent of Apollo 9 today, although we will be doing it in 2 launches. And conveniently, if there is to be any problem, we'll have Canis 4 standing by, which can serve as a rescue mission with its kilometer per second of delta V. We can launch it uncrewed and then put the 3 crew aboard. The other thing we're going to want to have building is we're going to want to have building a full-up trebuchet with the Retriever atop it, which we will send out into lunar orbit to test an uncrewed lunar landing. Now, basically, that is going to be our equivalent of Apollo 10, because, of course, the real Apollo 10 was an all-up dress rehearsal of Apollo. It was a crewed mission. They went out into lunar orbit. The Stafford, and I forget who the lunar module pilot was, got into the lunar module. They got within a few kilometers of the moon's surface. They did a hot abort, got back to orbit, docked, came home. So instead of doing that with the crew where we get really close, we're going to take advantage of the fact that somewhat unrealistically, we can fly the lunar module unguided, uncrewed. So I think it's 4 meters. I think that's the size of the payload fairing, but let's find out. So we're going to land this actually on the moon's surface. It's worth pointing out that this is more launch vehicle than we strictly need. But I'm not going to say no to some extra launch vehicle capacity. Get rid of that shroud. Yeah, that looks about right. All right. So let's bring that up. Bring that up. Bring this up. It seems to be as high up as it can go. And happily, that is just enough to get it off the floor. And actually, we're going to leave it just like that. And we're actually going to add some more launch clamps on here. just in case that will help with our pad destroying issues. We shall see. Why are those launch clamps in the wrong stage? They should have copied the stage over. All right. So here is our retriever lunar. We have ridiculous quantities of delta V. We have 3495 plus 4750. So that's going to need maybe 1200 meters per second from the next stage. That'll still leave 3.6 kilometers per second to do TLI. So this is, of course, quite expensive. It's 60,000 funds, give or take. And we're going to build 2 of them immediately. 1, 2. Oh, and let's verify that this is correct and not going to kill our... Yep, that will not kill our J2s. All right. So there's all that. And let's also go ahead and queue up one of our Labradors. Block 3 lunar. All right, so fix this. Fix this. That is already okay. So I don't think we have any staging issues, but we are going to go ahead and add these new launch clamps in the hope that it will make our life easier. And put it nice high up in the air. All right, so this is all set for its lunar mission. Why is the... That's odd. That's beyond odd. Why the delta V varies on that thing. All right, let's go ahead and extend it out a little bit. To 10 minutes and 30 seconds, just to get some extra delta V in here. Because remember, last time we did run a little short. Now this has to go up by a little bit. There we go. Now let's just verify our numbers. We should be over capacity. That's interesting. Oh. For some reason, this is the wrong launch vehicle. That would explain why things are off. I thought I saved that with the new launch vehicle, but apparently I did not. Come along. Come along, come along, come along. There we are. Now, Okay, and this now comes down to here. And those numbers look much better to me, I do believe. Yes, indeed, 300 more meters per second. That makes much more sense. Fix you. Fix you. Our liftoff thrust-to-weight ratio is low. I would prefer it to be somewhat higher. But, you know, it is what it is. So we'll have a lot of gravity losses, that's for sure. Okay, and let's put our 4 clamps back on. That looks good. Now, let's go ahead and save it. Let's go ahead and build it. And that's another $10 million ahead of the lander. Now, we did in the last episode test out these casters. But literally you wouldn't notice them. 270 kilonewtons sea level thrust versus we're doing probably 10 meganewtons at sea level. So yeah, you kind of wouldn't notice. I did remark in the last episode that this actually flies very, very like the actual Saturn V in terms of launch profile, because it's got very similar liftoff thrust. It then has a 6-minute upper stage and then a 8 or so minute upper stage. Interesting quirk of fate. So anyway, form follows function, as always. Right, so we've queued those up. Now the next thing we get to spend money on is our VAB upgrades completed. So we can now go ahead and buy a 3rd VAB rate. Upgrades. So let's buy a bunch of these. We'll stay at about 1 million funds. And let's move this up to that's as far as we can go, I guess. All right. So let us examine the future. This mission gets renamed. It becomes LR2R. This gets renamed. It becomes LR2L, the Labrador component. This becomes LR3. This becomes LR4R. And finally, this becomes LR4L. All right. So it looks like, assuming everything goes well, in some number of days, that is less than 100, we will be landing on the moon. Is that true? No, that's flagrantly wrong. This gets done in 14 days, so then 3 days get shaved off that when that completes. So 63 days, 69 days. So we'll have one of these basically sitting in the VAB while the other completes, and then we'll be ready to go for the moon. So we're actually looking within the next 6 months, counting this in effectively 14 and 66 days, 70, that's 80 days, and then 70 days for these. So 5 months. So we should be landing on the moon in about 5 months. Looking good. All right, so let's go ahead and actually do this mission. We want to warp for this to be done. Roll it out. Oops, my mouse is misbehaving a bit. All right, so it's a 2-week stay, so we might as well go ahead and launch this now, and we'll actually launch the retriever into the same plane once we've finished launching this Labrador. So now we get to decide who gets to be our shakedown crew. So Lynn Caldwell has not been to the moon yet. Diane Fernandez has not been to the moon yet. And Anatoly Jortenkov has not been to the moon yet. Debbie Newman has not been to the moon yet. Jacqueline Brewer has not been to the moon yet. John Watts has not been to the moon yet. And Anthony Garcia, our spare scientist, has not been to the moon yet. All right, so we have 2 non-super veteran crews to go. So let's go ahead and take a veteran pilot. I wish you could see mission counts. Victoria Douglas hasn't done anything in a while. Let's take her, and John Watts, and Jacqueline Brewer. Okay. So a true veteran of a command pilot, and then some Earth orbit station veterans for the rest of things. And all right, so let's go ahead and launch that. Okay. Now, once again, we have our catapult E. Okay, we're going to loft fairly high. I think 170 is going to be about right. There's definitely going to be some throttling down involved. Um, I think that we're just going to go ahead and launch. We're not going to bother launching in any particular plane. We just want to launch to a nice orbit. And we could have taken some sort of contract to help pay for this, but our whole taking of the first crewed lunar landing contract is basically bankrolling all of this. We still have plenty of money in the bank, so I'm not worried yet. So let's go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff. Come on, there we go. And we'll go to a 28.5 degree orbit. Now that 66 meters per second is lying. 68, sorry. What's actually happening is that the service module's tanks are locked, as you can see here. We can now unlock them, and now you'll see the true delta V of this craft. That's quite a lot of delta V, so we should have no trouble at all rendezvousing with the lander for testing operations. I've also gone ahead and temporarily given this the IVA of the Mark II pod, just so we have 3 seats to get around that ship manifest issue. I've done the same for the lander, so it has the Mark II lander cans 2-seat IVA. So as you can tell, things look weird for IVA. They don't at all match the exterior because I'm not using the correct IVA, but I needed something that had 3 seats. So far, the launch is going just fine. Pretty clear day at the Cape today. How are we looking? So we're definitely going to be throttling down during the rest of this burn because we hit a max of 6 Gs, and that's not fun for anyone involved. And minute left on first stage burn. Okay, 45 seconds left. We're going to start throttling down fairly soon. We're going to throttle down at 3.75 Gs, and we're already up to 3.5. Let's see. 30 seconds left. Now that 30 seconds is actually lying because we're already throttling down, so this is assuming unthrottled, so we're actually gonna take more than that time. Turning on RCS. Oh, this doesn't actually, right. This has the pure second stage version of the Ranger stage, so it doesn't actually have any RCS. It has regular ullage motors. So we'll have a normal separation and ignition. Okay. Now down to about 2/3 throttle. This is throttle with respect to its minimum throttle. So 1/3, since it only throttles down to halfway, is like, 7/12 or whatever. Or, yeah, something like that. And burnout. So, staging, ullage ignition, ignite the engines. Things are looking fine. Let's pitch up. And engines are fine, so we'll jettison the escape tower. It's this. Interesting. I thought that was a thought that was a 6-minute. Oh no, it's a 7-minute 10-second stage. That's right. That's right. Oops, we need to pitch up a bit more. Because 2 minutes and 16 seconds, although that's lying, because notice the rate it's going down at isn't 1 second per second. It's going to be a while before orbit, so we have to pitch up. Everybody's still fairly cheery. Our inclination is still 28.6, give or take. We haven't really started lowering yet. We're going to a fairly high perigee. We'll probably have about a 240 kilometer perigee. And perform final pitch up, which hopefully will see us through the rest of this burn. Because it's this long burning hydrolock stage, we're launching to a higher perigee than usual. I mean, as you know, if we're going to the moon, I'd launch to a 185 kilometer parking orbit, but for this mission, it's okay that we're going up to probably a 250 kilometer. Well, we'll probably end up back down at 240 by the end, because we'll of course fall down past apogee. So yeah, we'll probably get up about 260 before we really pass apogee and then start falling back down to 240. Does this have retros? It does not. That is what I forgot to put on this thing. I forgot to put some retros on this thing, but that's okay. We can pull away with the service module. All right, apogee's still climbing. For those of you who may have missed my earlier explanation or it gone dim at the time, I refer to this. I've been talking about perigee because, of course, this is apogee, but that's going to become, let me pitch down a little bit, our orbit's actual perigee, because you never, ever, ever, ever want to launch to apogee. You always want to launch to perigee, and then if you want a higher apogee, you burn longer, and then your apogee gets higher on the other side. Because if you're launching higher than you could, you're taking gravity losses. You don't have to. Pitch down a little bit more. So apogee's getting a little high. We'll have a ways to fall down after it if we want. Maybe we can go to 250. I don't know. We'll see. We had plenty of delta V, so I don't think it's going to be a problem. Because I rated this launch vehicle using the old engines. The RL-10 A33s, and these are the A33As, which means we have lower gravity losses than that, which means we'll be doing a little bit better. Nearing 28.5 degrees inclination. Pitch down a little bit more. Yeah, I must have overpitched quite drastically early on to have this high of an apogee. Yeah, now we'll just fall past apogee, not try to raise it anymore. Steering losses have been pretty minor so far, but gravity losses are the killer this time because we're going so high. Our gravity losses are much higher than I'd want them to be. Still 2.5 kilometers per second to orbit, give or take. Well, no, now 2.25. Okay, we're about to pass apogee. Only about 2.5 minutes burn time remaining, so that's not a lot. All right, we have plenty of delta V, so we can just insert into a really high orbit, with a high perigee orbit. That's all right. Sync rate up to minus 40 meters per second. I guess I should have stuck with 160 as the turn-end altitude here. Haven't launched this in a bit. It needed 180 when we launched the lander using this launch vehicle, because of course it didn't get enough delta V from the launch vehicle. It had to circularize on its crasher stage. Okay, minute 50 remaining. That sync rate though. So get up to about 150. Let's pull up. Okay, we'll come back up to 8 degrees pitch. Okay, 1 kilometer per second to orbit. Okay, pitching up more to kill off that vertical speed before we insert. We're almost 2,000 kilometers downrange. Less than 30 seconds stage time remaining. Killing off that sync rate. 15 seconds. All right. And perfect. Except for MechJeb, of course, pitching us wildly at insertion. So we've picked up a spin, but whatever. Let's discard the stage. And we're going to mark it as debris so it doesn't bother us anymore. Come on. There we are. Rename vessel. Debris. There we are. Okay, let's kill off our spin and orient for circularization. Okay. Nice 300-kilometer orbit. Well, I'll accept 302. 302 is acceptable to me. And let's go ahead and circularize. Actually, you know what? Let's... I think we might as well go for a 500-kilometer orbit. Okay, and let's shake out solar panels and antennas. Okay. Perform some ullage and light it up. Oops. And I think we actually want to be more closely aligned because we just corrected our inclination slightly. Okay. Now, let's have MechJeb do it. Change apoapsis, 500 kilometers. Okay. Okay. And we want to circularize at apogee. So let's flip. Watch the great world spin below us. Okay, and let's line up. And warp to the node. It's going to be on the dark side. There we go. This was not the purpose for which the Delta F engine was designed, but it's fitting that our service module engine is an AJ-10, given that the Apollo service propulsion system was also yet another AJ-10 derivative, just happened to have 3 times the thrust of its contemporary J-10-138. So, we'll do a little bit of ullage. There we are. And we'll let MechJeb execute the node. Oops. No, MechJeb, no. Why you do that thing? Still got the ullage bug, huh? Alright, now it will burn at the correct time, I think. Yep, now it will. Okay. Okay, and we'll fine-tune it ourselves. Oops. Okay. Okay, now we are in a 500-kilometer orbit. Okay, and we just need to turn a little bit more so we're got fairly good alignment regarding the sun. There we are. Okay, we still have oodles of delta V remaining. Great, so now we will go ahead and launch the lander into a rendezvous orbit. Okay, so that's 2 days until it's done. So while we're waiting for all this, they're up there in the Labrador spacecraft, shaking it out, testing all the systems, getting ready for this. All right, now go ahead and make sure there's nobody in it. Okay, here is here's the lander. All right, so we need to go ahead and target that. We need to think we want to essentially launch into plane of target with 0 phase angle difference. So here we are. It's within the hour. That's nicely timed, if I do say so myself. Really, it's kind of random. All right, we're launching in about 10 seconds. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Engine sequence start. 2, 1, liftoff. Liftoff at 35 past the hour. It's what is that? 3:30 now, 3:36 p.m. local time. That is quite a large payload fairing. Definitely larger than the upper stage. almost as large as the first stage. Almost as tall, I mean. Certainly wider than everything else. And we have no hitchhikers, which is nice. Now, see, that's what annoys me. Limit throttle, keep limited throttle over 5%, somehow manage to uncheck itself. That confuses me greatly. So as we're flying up, now as good as time as any to talk about, I usually say something like roll program initiated, and then pitch program. So what's actually going on here is that the launch pad has a certain orientation. It's fixed. It has, places you can put the launch umbilical tower. The launch vehicle also has, whoops, that's, come on, MechJeb. That's interesting. Not sure why MechJeb failed so badly here. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention and MechJeb deviated us too far, and it looks like we're probably about to snap in two. That is deeply annoying. What can I do here? We can turn unbreakable joints on. I doubt that will actually make a difference. I can take 180 meters per second off our easterly velocity, and we'll see if that fixes things. No, that apparently deignited the engines anyway, and everything's gonna break. We'll be right back. I am not at all sure why MechJeb has that deviation occur on some launches and not others. Obviously, it's because we're statically unstable, but we shouldn't deviate from prograde. I mean, we have limit angle of attack set, and certainly the gimbal torque is enough to correct for that. So that's an interesting one. All right, so as KSP reloads, I will finish the description of what's going on there. So basically, rocket guidance, certainly in the early days, was pretty dependent on having zero roll. In fact, the R7 for a long time, I think this is probably no longer true, but early on, you actually couldn't set a launch azimuth. It literally only had pitch control, and it just kept heading steady and roll steady. So if you wanted to launch to a different azimuth, they actually rotated the pad structure it was sitting on at Baikonur. So there was never a roll program on those early R7 launches. US launch vehicles would generally have a roll program because you design the pad a certain way, so the umbilical towers were in a certain place, and the launch vehicle, of course, would only have, one set of ports to plug the umbilicals into. So you had a fixed pad orientation. And then to launch to your desired azimuth, you would perform a roll program to line you up. And then you would perform a pitch program. Now, so in KSP generally, we talk about gravity turns. But gravity turn is kind of a misnomer, because unless you are literally just initiating the turn and then letting aerodynamics take you the rest of the way, that is not a gravity turn. It's a pitch program. Pitch program means your pitch is under active control throughout the flight. you're not just letting aerodynamics stabilize you. In the early days, they were quite simple. They'd be something as simple as pitch down 0.5 degrees per second. That was used, I believe, on the Redstone, used for the Mercury Redstone launches, and I think also for Atlas, down to a given pitch of like, I think minus 10 degrees or so. Because what would happen, of course, on those early launches, early US launches, is you want to insert at zero vertical velocity, as I was talking about, but you would build up more than, it would take too long to reach apogee. So they would actually pitch down below the horizon to kill off some vertical speed. Okay, let's try this again. And then would insert at about 148 kilometer perigee. Initial apogee, which becomes the perigee. So, yeah, so you'd have that kind of simple pitch program. There's more advanced ones, obviously. MechJeb flies a pitch program based on the evaluation of a spline with a tangent here, a control point in the middle, and then a fixed tangent here. And this turn shape controls where the midpoint is, which controls the slope of the pitch program. So also this should be more like 90, I think. So the roll program aligns us with our launch azimuth, which in this case is basically 90 degrees. Once we get up to the pitch program start velocity, we'll start the pitch program. And then we'll fly that up until I start tweaking it once we get onto the second stage. Because they quickly found that kind of fixed pitch program is not what you need if you want to insert into a precise orbit with upper stages. So one of the early guidance programs used there was called Powered Explicit Guidance. It was used on Atlas Centaur, and I believe the Saturn instrument unit used a similar system. People have written KOS versions of that, and also a KRPC version of that. And basically the idea is you explicitly solve the equations of motion every so often, and that gives you a desired pitch such that you will end up at zero vertical velocity at your insertion point. So long as you have sufficient delta V in the stage, which it also estimates based on a known, I think it based, what? Why is, come on, MechJeb, you can do this better than this. You're better than this. Why are you doing this to me? All right, I think we can let MechJeb take control again. Yep, high Q period is passed. Okay, so powered explicit guidance. The idea is if you solve equations of motion, and basically I've kind of been instinctually and based on my lots of experience flying these sorts of things, been doing the job of a guidance program like Powered Explicit Guidance by varying pitch to control time to apogee such that we end up at zero vertical velocity at the right time. So I've basically been impersonating a guidance program. We're somewhat misaligned. Guess we have to go south some first. Alright, now let's try lining up. And burnout, ullage, ignition, and we're high enough that we can just go ahead and dump the fairings. And there they go. So, pitch up. Now, it's worth remembering we went way high the last time. We don't want to do that. So let's do this. And meanwhile, let's check in the map view how our orbit versus the target orbit is going. Let's line up the target orbit precisely. We are to its... No, we're actually quite closely aligned. Would you look at that? Ugh, that shroud annoys me. Must have forgotten to turn it off. We're going for a much lower insertion perigee this time because we want a significant difference in orbital periods so that we can do a rendezvous correctly. Okay, we are clearly too far to the north, so we're going to come right some. We're going to come right quite a lot. Pitch down a little bit. Okay, so yeah, I'm just watching my relative inclination, trying to guess how to best align with... There's the descending node. We're gradually pushing it away from ourselves. I know what we need to do. We need to get it closer to ourselves and then steer the other way. Really quite sharply. And I guess we can... Oops. Yeah, we want to get it quite close to ourselves. We're picking up steering losses, but that's okay. We've got delta V to spare. Okay. So now we will come along until we hit the descending node, and then we'll come hard left. Always good to be hard left. So meanwhile, I guess we can talk a bit about, while I'm watching this, talk a bit about the fairings. So I drop the fairings right over the Kármán line. I generally try to drop fairings right over the Kármán line. And there's no particular reason for that. In fact, the main issue with fairings is not drag. Like, oftentimes fairings will cause more drag than not having them. The issue with fairings is that they protect your payload. That is their purpose in life, from aerodynamic stresses and thermal stresses. In pure drag terms, only in very few circumstances will you do better by having fairings up. Why you're actually having the fairings there is to protect the payload. Whoa, that's interesting. I oversteered a bit. Okay, now we can go to 28.5. How aligned are we? We're aligned enough, I guess. Nope. Let's try going this way. Point 4 at 28.462. Okay, now we need to pitch up a good bit. .04 is fairly close. We'll have to correct that with the pod, but that's close enough. We've wasted a lot of delta V, however. We are definitely falling fast. That's for sure. So we got to pitch up a bit more because we took all those steering losses. So so we haven't achieved as much orbital velocity as one might hope we would have. Part of it also is just that the thrust-to-weight ratio of this thing is anemic. It's execrable. We're going to be inserting quite low as it happens. I think I let our vertical velocity get too high. Sync rate, that is. Okay, less than 30 seconds left on this stage. Kilometer per second until orbital velocity. Probably inserted like 170 kilometers or so. And RCS to on. And away we go. Yeah, we'll insert about 170 kilometers. That's fine. That's just fine. I'm annoyed that we didn't get our relative inclination closer than that, but oh well. (500 meters per second) orbital velocity. Gradually decreasing our sink rate. Steering loss is still increasing. Got it down to about 100 meters per second sink rate. Okay, now we're really making progress. Still 50 meter per second sink rate, which is not awesome. We'll see if we manage to kill that off before we insert. $30. Perigee is slowly rising. $20. Okay, pitch down and insertion. All right, so let's go ahead and extend the antennas, extend the solar panels, and now we'll go ahead and swap to the capsule and set it up to rendezvous. Okay, so where's our lander? Right there. Set as target. We want to match planes. Well, first let's see when the next Toman transfer is. 15 hours. Very well. Let's match planes first. 5.3 meters per second. So it's almost 1 meter per second per hundredth of a degree. It's more than 1 meter per second per hundredth of a degree. That's crazy. But okay. So let's warp to that node. Oh, whoops. No, that's wrong. Warp to next maneuver. There we are. All right. So let's align with it. Okay, we have performed some ullage. Okay. And we will finish the burn on RCS. Okay, that is quite closely aligned planes. Now let's go ahead and set up the Hohmann transfer. Okay. Separation 400 meters. Ugh, it's on the night side. Well, oh well. You take what you can get, I guess. Okay. Intriguing that the burn direction is almost directly aligned with the target right now. That's an interesting quirk of fate. Okay. Why did it just drastically change? That's odd. Now it's correct. Whoops. Okay, burn the node. And let's see how close our closest approach gets. "19 kilometers, huh?" Well, that's annoying. Because we burned that node late, apparently. Let's see how much a fine-tune costs. 1.3 meters per second, node in 23 minutes. Very well. We shall do that thing. We shall do our fine-tune. Okay, let's align with the node. Ten, 9 seconds. I realize that we're going through a lot of effort just for a simple dry run in Earth orbit, but I'd like to... It has been shown on previous occasions the importance of testing stuff first. And certainly in real life that's important. So that's how we're playing it. Maybe I should have brought the more powerful RCS. This RCS is very slow. Alright, now what's our closest separation? Now our separation. What the heck? We made things worse? That literally makes no sense. That's crazy. Guess 20 kilometers is as close as we're going to get. So let's match velocities at closest approach. No, that's match planes. Match velocities with target. Okay, and let's align with that node. Okay. Warp to the next maneuver. Interesting that it thinks it's here rather than where orbit targeter thought the separation was. But whatever. Okay. Oops, the burn estimation time was off. Okay, let's aim it a little bit better. We want to align that retrograde indicator with the target's retrograde. Okay. Okay. Looking good. Now let's line. Oh shoot! It did that jumpy thingy. Are we closer than 2 kilometers? Maybe. All right. What does this claim closest separation is? 0.2 kilometers. All right. That's fine. Oh, we're currently only 100 and... We're really close now. That's why things jumped. All right, so let's park here. Okay, so we want to wait until we're on the light side for this docking, I think. Okay. There we are. So, let's go ahead and get docked. Control from here. Okay. All right. Huh. Why is it? Why is this alignment indicator failing so badly? That confuses me deeply. But okay. Ah, here we are. That's why. Not a whole lot of sun going on here. Ah, we're lined up backwards for the sun. That would be why. Okay. Okay, let's line up with the port. Okay. Gradually lining up. Okay. Whoa, whoops, too far. Come on. Okay, realignment in progress. Okay. Easy does it. Man, this must be so much easier in stock KSP when you have reaction wheels and stuff. And when alignment doesn't immediately translate into translation. Okay, closure rate 20 centimeters per second. That's probably a little high, to be honest, for reality, but we'll take it. There we are, docked. All right, so let's open the hatches. Okay, and sadly that took much longer than I thought it would, so we're going to go ahead and end the episode here. And in the next episode we can actually practice all the on-orbit maneuvers. We'll transfer crew over, we'll get everybody squared away. We'll, yeah, so pilot and engineer will hop over, I guess. Shake out the, for the first time, crewed module. And we'll get that all shaked out, then we'll re-perform the rendezvous, and then everybody will come home. So, on that happy note, let's go ahead and, oh, I need to close this. Head back to Space Center. So, thank you everyone for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. You learned something from it. And I hope to see you again tomorrow night. Thanks, and bye-bye.